Harlow Lane was quiet, too quiet. Houses stood in perfect rows, their lawns trimmed and neat, but at the end of the cul-de-sac loomed a shadow, a house dark and brooding, with peeling paint and overgrown weeds. Locals whispered of its past, of a family torn apart by tragedy. No one dared to go near. It stood empty, a monument to forgotten horrors. Then one day a moving van arrived. The Carter family, new to town, had bought the house unaware of its sinister reputation. They were excited to start fresh in their new home. They didn't believe the rumors. They would soon learn the truth. Boxes piled up in the entryway as the Carters explored their new home. The house was old, with creaky wooden floors and a musty smell that hinted at its long history. The family was excited, but also a bit apprehensive about what they might find in their new abode. 10-year-old Emily and her younger brother Ethan raced through the dusty rooms, their laughter echoing in the silence, but something felt off. The rooms were filled with an eerie stillness, and the dust seemed to hang in the air like a forgotten memory. The air felt heavy, and shadows seemed to dance at the edge of their vision. It was as if the house itself was watching them, waiting to reveal its secrets.
"Dad, did you feel that?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with unease. "It's so cold in here." She shivered, rubbing her arms to ward off the chill that seemed to seep from the walls.
"It's just an old house, Emily. Nothing to worry about." Her father tried to reassure her, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss.
That night, Emily woke to a cold spot in her room. The air was frigid, and she could see her breath forming small clouds in the dim light. The temperature plummeted, and she felt a presence nearby. It was as if someone or something was standing right beside her bed, watching her. She pulled the covers over her head, her heart pounding. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, but the feeling of being watched was too strong to ignore. The next morning, she found a child's toy on the floor, a porcelain doll with vacant eyes. It was positioned in a way that made it seem like it was staring right at her. She hadn't seen it before. The doll was old and dusty, with a cracked face and a faded dress. It looked like it had been there for years, yet Emily was certain it hadn't been there the day before.
"Mom, where did this doll come from?" Emily asked, holding the doll up for her mother to see.
"Oh, it must have been left behind by the previous owners," her mother replied, though she looked just as puzzled as Emily. "Don't worry about it, dear," her mother said, trying to sound reassuring. But as she took the doll from Emily, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine.
Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences continued. The once peaceful home had become a place of unease and mystery. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and the air was thick with an unsettling presence. Doors slammed shut on their own, often in the dead of night, startling everyone awake. It was as if the house had a mind of its own, playing tricks on its inhabitants. Footsteps echoed in the hallway when no one was around. The sound was unmistakable, heavy and deliberate, as if someone or something was pacing back and forth. Whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, too faint to make out the words. They were like distant conversations, just out of reach, filling the silence with a chilling presence. Emily and Ethan were convinced the house was haunted. They would huddle together at night, sharing stories of what they had seen and heard, their imaginations running wild with fear. Their parents dismissed it as their imaginations running wild. They tried to reassure the children, attributing the noises to the house settling and the whispers to the wind.
"Ethan, did you hear that?" Emily's voice trembled as she clutched her brother's arm, her eyes wide with fear.
"Kids, it's just the house settling." Their father's voice was calm, but there was a hint of frustration. He was tired of the constant interruptions and the children's wild tales. "There's no such thing as ghosts." He tried to sound convincing, but even he couldn't ignore the strange occurrences that had become a daily part of their lives.
One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Emily stumbled upon a loose floorboard. The attic was a place of forgotten memories, filled with old furniture and dusty boxes. Curiosity got the better of her, and she pried it open. Her heart raced as she wondered what secrets the house was hiding. Beneath it lay a small wooden box, its surface covered in dust. It looked ancient, as if it had been hidden away for decades, untouched by time. Inside, she found a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with faded ink. The handwriting was elegant, and the words seemed to tell a story long forgotten.
"Look, Ethan, a journal!" Emily's voice was filled with excitement and a hint of fear. What secrets would they uncover within its pages?
The attic was dark and dusty, filled with cobwebs and forgotten treasures. It was a place that seemed to exist outside of time, where the past lingered in every corner, and the air was thick with the weight of years gone by. Sunlight streamed through a single grimy window, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. The light seemed to bring a small glimmer of life to the otherwise lifeless space, casting long shadows that moved with the shifting beams. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and the weight of forgotten memories. Each breath seemed to carry the echoes of laughter and sorrow, of lives once lived and now long forgotten. It was a place where secrets whispered and shadows danced. The walls seemed to hold stories untold, and the floorboards creaked with the weight of hidden truths. Emily and Ethan stood frozen, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. They had always been curious about the attic, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. They had discovered something extraordinary, something that sent shivers down their spines. It was an old journal, bound in cracked leather and covered in a thick layer of dust. The journal felt cold to the touch, as if possessed by an unseen force. Emily could feel a strange energy emanating from it, a sense of foreboding that made her hesitate. Emily carefully opened it, her heart pounding in her chest. The pages were yellowed with age, and the ink had faded, but the words were still legible.
This is incredible. What do you think it says? Emily's voice was barely a whisper, filled with awe and curiosity.
I don't know, but we have to find out. Ethan's eyes were wide with determination, his mind racing with possibilities.
And so the Carter children began to unravel the mystery of the house on Harlow Lane, one page at a time. Each entry in the journal revealed a new piece of the puzzle, drawing them deeper into the history of the house and the secrets it held. They knew they were on the brink of discovering something incredible, something that would change their lives forever. Section 5. The Journal's Tale. The journal belonged to a young girl named Sarah who had lived in the house over a century ago. Her words painted a grim picture of life in the old house. Sarah wrote of strange noises, cold spots, and shadowy figures lurking in the corners of her vision. She mentioned other children, ghostly apparitions that only she could see. They wanted her to play.
As Emily read further, her blood ran cold. Sarah's entries became more frantic, filled with terror and despair. The ghostly children were becoming more insistent, their pleas turning into demands. They wanted her to join them, to be their playmate forever.
Section 6. Playmates in the Night. One night, Emily woke to the sound of giggling outside her bedroom door. She cautiously opened the door and peered into the hallway. 3 children, their faces pale and their eyes hollow, stood at the end of the hall. They were dressed in clothing that looked like it was from another time. They beckoned to her, their voices high-pitched and eerily cheerful.
Come play with us, Emily. We've been waiting for you.
Emily's breath caught in her throat. She recognized them from the descriptions in Sarah's journal. These were the ghostly children who haunted the house. Section 7. A Ghastly Invitation. The ghostly children floated towards Emily, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They reached out to her with their cold, translucent hands. Their touch sent shivers down her spine. Their voices, though sweet and inviting, filled her with dread.
We just want to play. We promise it will be fun.
Emily knew she had to get away. She backed slowly into her room, her eyes never leaving the ghostly figures. She slammed the door shut and fumbled for the light switch. The hallway was empty. Emily's screams echoed through the house, waking her parents and Ethan. They rushed to her room, their faces etched with concern.
There were ghostly children. I saw them.
At first they were skeptical, but the terror in her eyes convinced them that something was terribly wrong.
We need to leave this house now.
The Carters decided to leave the house immediately. They packed their belongings in a frenzy, throwing clothes and valuables into suitcases. The house felt colder now, the air thick with a palpable sense of dread. They couldn't get out fast enough. The Carters piled into their car, the engine roaring to life in the stillness of the night. As they sped away from the house, Emily glanced back at the upstairs window.
I saw them, the ghostly children watching us.
She could have sworn she saw the ghostly children watching them, their pale faces pressed against the glass. Their eyes seemed to follow the car as it disappeared into the night. The Carters drove until the sun began to rise, putting as much distance between themselves and the haunted house as possible. They checked into a motel, exhausted and shaken to their core. They had escaped the house, but the terrifying experience would stay with them forever. The Carters never returned to the house on Harlow Lane. They left their belongings behind, unwilling to set foot in that cursed place again. The experience had changed them, leaving them with a profound sense of unease and a lingering fear of the unknown.
I can't stop thinking about them. The ghostly children.
Emily and Ethan never forgot the ghostly children. They haunted their dreams, their laughter echoing in the darkness. The house on Harlow Lane remained vacant, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked within its walls. The haunted house at the end of the cul-de-sac remained a mystery. Locals whispered tales of its dark past, of the family torn apart by tragedy and the ghostly children who roamed its halls. But no one knew for sure what had happened within those walls. The Carters moved on with their lives, but they could never shake the feeling that they had left something unfinished behind. The ghostly children, trapped in their eternal game, continued to haunt the house on Harlow Lane, waiting for their next playmates.